I've been doing this channel for a very long time and I've had some really crappy whiskeys. Thankfully there's not too many of them, but I thought it'd be kind of an interesting video. I've been wanting to do this one for a little while to talk to you about some of the whiskeys that I regret buying. And a lot of the time it's going to be something that I way overpaid for that had lackluster flavor, or in the case of one of these, actually two of these, just complete lie. So let's go ahead and jump into this list. And I'm going to start off with one that was such a disappointment to me. Now, this is the Connemara 12. You've heard me talk about this one before, and the fact that, unlike the no age statement, it's just, like, I liked the no age statement quite a bit, and I've gone back and I've retried it, and it's not, like, amazing, but it is pretty solid, and it's a cool concept. It's a peated Irish whiskey. Now, this is a 12-year-old version of it, and just, you know, it's a reasonable expectation that something older is going to be better, because they've given it the time it needs, and they chose it specifically at what they thought was the right time. Now, this isn't always the case, of course, but a 12-year-old Irish peated whiskey sounded awesome. And when I tried it, boy, was it just disappointing. And this bottle's like $80. And compared to the $49 regular no age statement, that one's way better. This one is boring. It's like one tone, and that tone is basically not an even very good flavored peat. And it's just boring. Such a waste of money. All right, so moving along. Next, we're going to go with the Matsui. Now, this is a Japanese whiskey, and this one kind of kills me. And there's a few of these that you'll notice. Actually, no. This is the Connemara 12 was given to me. This one was given to me as well. The rest of them I purchased myself. So this kind of, it hurts to say something bad about something that was just given to you, but I'm going to anyway. So this is the Mizunara cask, which, another sad thing here, like, Mizunara is a fairly rare oak, and someday I'll kind of go over different types of oak or something like that, but Mizunara, just know it's one of the more expensive and harder to get, because it needs to be a fairly old tree in Japan, and those are hard to come by. So, in this case, they took what could have been an okay whiskey, they put it at 48%, which should be good, right? Almost everything at 48%, like, that's a sweet spot for me for sure. And then they put it in Mizunara. And when you have this, it's just, again, you're going to see kind of a trend here, just boring and just bleh. Like, Mizunara has this really delicate, wonderful, light, kind of happy flavor to it. And it can do wonders for a whiskey. I mean, I'm just thinking of Glendalough nailed Mizunara. I'm struggling at the moment to think of any other Mizunara that I like more than the Glendalough 13. Let me know in the comments if there's a good Mizunara-based whiskey, like aged whiskey, that I need to try. In the case of this one, super expensive, it's over $80. And this is a younger whiskey. 48% is good. That they were in the right ballpark there. But it's almost like, I think the reason I regret this one is because I contributed to a crappy whiskey using really good oak. So that's something I don't love. Either way, this one's definitely one to stay away from. All right. What should I pick next? Let's go with the Jefferson's Ocean. So, this one is Voyage 13. Now, they are like way up in the Voyage 20 something at this point, so it's been quite a few years since I bought this one, and it's still about half full. Now, Jefferson's Ocean, for those that don't know, basically this is, they take a whole bunch of whiskeys and they put them on a boat, and then they sail this predetermined route, and the sloshing of the whiskey around in the barrel really does a good job to it. It's an interesting story. It's a cool enough story, especially if you're just buying this and being like, hey, friends, come over, drink. I've got a cool whiskey that has a cool story. Let me tell you about it. Like, that's why I bought it for $100 or like $80. Something like, it was like a lot of money. And it's been years that I've had this bottle, and I still just don't want to bother with it, because I had hopes of reviewing it at one point or another, and then it just became so old. Like, if I did a Voyage 13, people would be like, how the heck long have you had this bottle? But to me, again, this was just kind of I feel like I spent way too much money on what ultimately is a lackluster whiskey. This is a little bit too oaky, and I do like oaky, but that's really the only note that I can even give it. And it's actually been quite a while. Hold on. Yeah, it's oaky, but it's also, I remember the smell. So it's interesting how doing this, you smell it and you're like, oh yeah, that's what it tastes like. So this is caramel and it's oak, and that's it. So considering the fact that you are paying for this thing to go on a ship, go do all this stuff, and then you're overpaying because of the concept and the gimmick of it, for it to just taste like any other bourbon, like a cheaper bourbon, is a waste, you know? So total waste. Big regret there. All right. Moving on to one, just because those are all fine, but you would have seen those coming. This one is a little bit more surprising, I think. So this one is the Glenmorangie A Tale of Winter. Now, this is interesting. Why is this one a big regret? Well, I saw this one on a shelf. Actually, it was behind glass. I had to go get somebody, open up the the thing and everything. They had a few of them, so it wasn't like the last one or anything. But it was $100, and I was like so excited because I loved A Tale of Cake. I thought it was great. Those that saw the video, you know, check it out up there. I ended up making a pineapple upside down cake because I just thought it was a cool concept, and it tasted really good, and it was pineapple and fun, blah, blah, blah. This one's aged in, what is it called? Marsala casks. And this one just didn't do it for me at all. When I tasted this one, I was like, is that really it? Is that it? The whole concept is supposed to be like this warm, inviting, remind you of Christmas. I mean, look at this thing. This actually has a texture on the box to kind of feel like a sweater. And they nailed it with the marketing, and they didn't nail it with the whiskey. And it just stinks to have spent that much money, and more so been very excited. I wouldn't be surprised, like, if they stopped. They kind of were doing these you know, A Tale of Cake, A Tale of Winter. I'm sure they're gonna do A Tale of Spring or something, but they haven't yet. And I'm curious if this one had anything to do with that, because my opinion and what I've seen online is people don't feel too dissimilar about this one. It was kind of a big letdown. All right, so moving along. Now, I think I might have said I was going to do 5, but I'm actually going to do one more, and then I'm going to have like just one that you're probably not going to agree with. So let's move on to another one that's just kind of another no-brainer. So this is the Yamato. So when you look at that decanter, you're like, all right, that's a cool decanter. I'm going to buy that whiskey. And that was exactly what I did. I thought it'd look really cool up on the shelf. I then proceeded to put it on the floor after having this. Now, here's the reason why, and kind of why I felt I owed you another one after this one. Technically, this is not whiskey. This is one of those situations where a Japanese whiskey doesn't meet all of the credentials or criteria to be a Japanese whiskey, and it's just like, let's even just go with what it tastes like. It's 40%, it's $100, and it was a complete waste of money. So the Yamato, I feel like Yamato is kind of one of the main offenders of this whole let me present myself as Japanese whiskey and not actually be Japanese whiskey, because they have a lot of expressions and none of them are Japanese whiskey. So just keep that in mind. Maybe avoid Yamato as far as a brand goes. So I'm going to break all the rules because I just kind of feel like it. So this is another one that I very much regret, and I bought this on impulse, and that's never a good sign. A person like me who actually takes the time to research this stuff, every time I buy on impulse, it's usually a mistake. And this was one of the bigger ones that I made in the last year. This is the Goalong Chinese whiskey. Now look at that. That's a really cool bottle. I actually only ended up doing a first taste of this because it just wasn't really worth it. But when you open this up, I mean, like, I looked at this in the store and I said, all right, it's $100, but most of that's going to be the decanter for sure. And I get it. And I totally get it. But here's why it was disappointing for me. This is the first Chinese whiskey that I've ever had, and it really put itself out there as, hey, like, this is kind of a new thing for the Chinese to do, is make whiskey. Like, try this out. And it's only 5 years old, so I thought to myself, like, all right, some ambitious distillery is making their own stuff, and they're finally putting it out there to the world, especially US, to have. And I was like, they nailed it with the bottle design. This is really cool. I bet this is going to be okay, you know? And it's 5 years aged, so it wasn't like claiming to be a 25-year-old Chinese whiskey that you know they're just sourcing from somewhere. However, they sourced it anyway. In fact, they sourced all the malt just from Australia and then brought it into China and made whiskey out of it. So it's like whiskey from China, you know, but whatever. It's really Australian whiskey made in China, which I keep all my opinions to myself. But I will say, like, the taste was not terrible on this one. I'm more disappointed, and my regret mostly comes from my disappointment about it not being what it claimed to be. And more specifically, it just being Australian whiskey. Like, it's not Chinese whiskey really at all. Anyway, so this one was a big disappointment. All right, here's the one that you're not going to agree with me on, but I don't care. My channel. So actually, I'll put this back here so you can look at all these fine disappointments. There we go. Boom. Anyway, so here's the last one. I got some flack when I made the original video on this one where people just did not agree, but the 1792 Bottled in Bond, for me, here's where you're going to disagree. If you've ever had a store pick of this, I hear that it is fantastic. Like, every store pick of this that anybody's tried has been very good. The just generic Bottled in Bond that 1792 puts out there, not great. It's 100 proof, which is good, but it doesn't do anything with that 100 proof. It's either maybe didn't spend enough time in the barrels, so it didn't really kind of smooth out enough, or take on enough of the characteristics of the barrel. But in the case of this one, it's just boring. It's it's not over-oaked. It's overproofed in that it tastes like alcohol. And there's really very few other flavors going on there, and in general, it's just boring. And it's been sitting on my shelf forever. Like, I mean, it's not even half gone, and it's covered with dust. So it's just not something I look at it, and I'm not even like, I don't even want to mix that, because it's not like that offensive, but it's like, that's just, you know? Anyway, that's it. I would love to have, first off, any other whiskey tubers, I would love to hear your lists of most, regretful, I guess you'd call it, whiskeys that you've bought over the last few years. But more so, I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Tell me what whiskeys that other people should be avoiding, and just, like, let it rip. You're not going to offend anybody. Tell me what you hated that you bought, whether it's too expensive, whether it was disappointing, whether it wasn't what it was supposed to be, whether it just didn't hit home for you. Anything that you want. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary, and I hope that you buy better bottles than I did. Cheers.